Hi everybody, how are you? Welcome to another edition of the Corner Table, a channel where we even dish in a lot of tips about life, careers, and some great tips to come up in your career. A lot of conventional and unconventional tips will come here. Kindly like these videos and subscribe to this channel for you to have a better career trajectory, I would say. Very interesting topic again, how to handle a very tough boss. I think you for sure have seen a lot of videos in this, but this is going to be slightly different, so I request you to watch to the end. A tough boss is galore. I think every workplace or most workplaces today are, if I can use the word, infested with tough bosses. And these tough bosses necessarily are not toxic bosses, but very tough taskmasters who have to make sure that the deliverables are met by the team as well as the organization. So you need to understand a tough boss from that context very importantly. Tough boss and toxic bosses are not synonymous. I think that is a very important understanding one needs to make to handle a tough boss. Toxic bosses essentially are very different from tough bosses. Toxic bosses abuse you. Toxic bosses insult you in front of your team. Toxic bosses try and belittle you and your work. So in that sense, if you encounter a toxic boss pretty soon into a new job or a new workplace, I think the quick route is to try and talk out things, understand him better, have a dialogue with him, ask him what he expects from you, ask him what deliverables you can work hard for. But despite that, if the toxic boss is not going to change himself or not going to change his approach towards you, yes, I think the easy route is to probably look out elsewhere or see if you can move to a different team within the organization, if that is going to be possible. I think this is in the respect of toxic bosses. But as I said right in the beginning, a tough boss is not essentially a toxic boss. You need to look at this from a framework of your personal experience, because you have moved into a workplace from a very different workplace, a different very culture. The place where you worked earlier could probably be a very different work environment where people were not taskmasters, people were not driven by larger goals, people were not under pressure to reach the goals of the organization and the revenue numbers. And this place where you've joined very recently, where you're encountering this tough boss, is a place where I think it is very different ball game. The ball game is different in terms of revenue goals. The ball game is different in terms of individual objectives, KRS to be achieved, and in that sense, your boss is under immense pressure to reach the goals of the organization, and the only way he can achieve it is probably being tough on you and not just you but all of these people. So this is a very important information you need to keep in mind when you want to answer the question how to answer a tough boss, or how to handle a tough boss, So essentially, when you are in such a situation where you need to understand why your boss is tough and why this particular job is very different from your earlier job, I think you need to understand from where the boss is coming, what is his expectations. Ask him what he expects out of you. Ask him what your KRAs are. You clearly have the job descriptions which were given to you when you joined the job, and you have to make sure that you are at least about 70-80% of all your performance indices in case you need to handle him well, because that is the only thing which is going to please him, or that is the only thing which is going to keep him comfortable, because end of the day he is there to make sure that the team goals are achieved. Once the team goals are achieved, the team can grow better. I think once the revenue goals are achieved, he is going to be able to share the incentives with the team at the end of the year. So it is also in your overall good and the team's overall good that is acting tough. So that is a very important understanding. Most of career consultants and coaches don't have this context in mind, and they really jump into a judgment as a boss is tough because his expectation is very high from you. To the contrary, when the boss is tough but he's very professional, he's going to shape you into a better person. He's going to shape you as someone who has the ability to handle pressure, who has the ability to work in a very disciplined way towards the team's goals and the organization's goals. So in that sense, you're going to be a big learner from such a tough boss. So you have to keep that in mind. So not all bosses or not all tough bosses are meant to be bid at you, and you have to get away from them to a better place, because today's workplace is completely changed. Today's workplace is extremely competitive. Today's workplaces are no more like earlier workplaces where it is just you go on 9 to 5 or a 10 to 5 job, you have some fun in the office and get back to home and enjoy your life. I think careers are not built that way anymore. Careers are built by sheer hard work, sheer persistence, sheer discipline at the work, and the only yardstick which you are measured in your career today is going to be what your accomplishments are in any particular job. You can be in a particular job for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, but end of the day, year on year, how are you better than the last year? How are your revenue goals, achievements better than the last year? How are your performance parameters better than the last year? These are the only measures which are going to dictate how your career trajectory will take you upwards or downwards. So you have to keep that in mind when you jump into a judgment on who these tough bosses are. Sure, I'd like you to probably know simple examples from my own life and career. I'm a professional with about three and a half decades of overall experience. I've dabbled in too many fronts. I've worked in sales and marketing, I've worked in HR, I've worked in executive search and a whole lot of areas. So when I first entered the realm of executing search, into my first job in executive search, I had an extremely tough boss. I think, to be very honest, having been or having worked in places which are probably were more relaxed, I think when I got into this place, it was extremely disciplined. It was a culture shock for me, particularly the way the boss operated. A boss who tirelessly can work for about 12 to 15 hours a day and be extremely disciplined in terms of what his goals are, what the team's goals are, and how things are to be achieved. So at the first instance, I kind of got very, very intimidated by this culture. I thought this is not the right place for me, because honestly, it was not a problem with the boss. It was a problem with myself. It was a problem with how I had been working for so many years, but not taking things very seriously, not taking the workplace goals very seriously. And to use a word in the HR context, I was just floating around, moving to different jobs every 1 or 2 years. But once I understood what this boss's expectations were, what the on-the-job expectations were, and what exactly were my deliverables almost on a daily and hourly basis. This is what I'm supposed to do in this hour. This is what I'm supposed to do in half a day. This is what I'm supposed to do one day. This is what is expected to be done in a week. So this was the kind of direction he gave me, and this was the kind of discipline he gave me into that job. And you believe me, when I started working very closely with him and working only towards his goals and objectives, it became a very, very fascinating learning experience. And this was one of the only jobs where I had done about a 5 to 6 year stint. And even when I had to quit after 6 years on a personal reason, because I had to be at home for personal compulsions, this boss made sure that I worked out from another 2 years. And so essentially, as a professional, I was able to shape myself much better and much sharper professional, was able to achieve things, was able to deliver things only because I had the ability to survive, understand and learn from this tough boss for that period of 5 to 7 years. So in that sense, that has shaped me as a person in a very, very big way. So unless otherwise you are able to spot this kind of opportunities where you can work with tough bosses and really come up in your career, it is going to be very difficult. I think, remember in mind, it is not going to be very easy to keep floating around on different jobs just because your boss is tough. Tough and demanding bosses are the order of the day, if you ask me. I think even in the Indian context or the Indian culture, gone are the days when you had stayed bosses, you don't expect anything much from you, and you just have to float around for about 10 hours a day and get back to home. That is not going to work anymore. What is going to work is only delivery on the job, delivery on the particular goals, and delivery on the KRAs which are expected from you. So if you are able to understand these better, understand and deliver these better, and deliver them month on month, you're going to enjoy your tough boss. And honestly, once you become a tough person, I think the boss is not going to be a tough boss. He's going to be an easy boss because you understood the goals of the organization better. So remember this mind, like everyone says, like most consultants says, it is not that you have to jump around because you see a tough boss. You have to quit your job or workplace because a tough boss. Your boss must not be toxic. Your boss must not be abusing you. Your boss will not insult you in front of others, in front of your team. Your boss gives you honest feedback in private. Your boss calls you into his cabin and tells him what exactly he felt about what you did. He gets tough on you because you didn't work properly. He gets tough on you because you're not able to deliver on time. So these are the contextual understanding which is required if you need to really come up in your career. Keep it in mind, tough bosses are meant to shape you better. Tough bosses are the order of the day, and they will make you shine better in your career. So if you have that understanding, you will not jump the gun and say, oh, I have a tough boss, so I'm not going to continue this organization, not to quit. So it is important to have this understanding essentially. So the most important thing which I want to re-emphasize and highlight in this whole talk of mine is that a tough boss is someone who is able to shape you better, who can really make your career better, who can make you shine in your job and grow within the job, within the organization. So if he's going to be able to give you all this, he's really not a tough boss. The matter or a problem is your perception. You are perceiving him as a tough boss. You are perceiving him as a tough boss because you are not a tough worker. You are not a worker who's very disciplined. So understand it that way. So I'm not saying you need to live with toxic bosses. Toxic bosses, yeah, immediately find the exit route and get out of the place, because toxic bosses are going to essentially screw your happiness, screw your frame of mind, and make sure that you don't actually work better or do anything productive. Toxic bosses are very, very different league, to be very honest. How toxic bosses work is they essentially have one set of people who are their favorites. They like sycophants irrespective of the kind of job they do, and they essentially survive by politicking within the organization and having one set of people who are loyal to them. They don't require team loyalty. They require individual loyalty. They've got about committed employees, about 3-4 employees who always hang around with them, and essentially all others are kind of dispensable for a toxic boss. Another interesting thing you will find with toxic bosses, particularly in the Indian context, is that if you pick up the closest 3-4 people who worked with these toxic bosses, most of them would have traveled along the career of the toxic boss. Wherever the toxic boss goes and works, these 3-4 people will go and join that boss. So it is essentially a kind of professional nepotism which is being cultivated by these toxic bosses. And yeah, organizations live with such toxic bosses, because end of the day, organizations, if they can achieve their goals from this particular team, it is good enough for them. The organizational CEO is not going to micromanage a boss and ask him how he's managed the entire team. For them, the deliverables matter, and these toxic bosses have the knack of delivering to the organizational goals using about 3-4 set of people who are their favored kids. So if you can spot these kind of characters in a toxic boss, I think it is essentially better that you leave, because these are not going to be professional people who can teach you anything. They are people who are kind of who breed nepotism, who breed a brag culture, but are able to survive because they are able to kind of pull strings in the right way and somehow achieve goals by hook or crook. Hook or crook is a word here. Whereas in the case of real tough bosses, these bosses essentially are very, very disciplined. These bosses have a clear path as to what they should achieve for themselves and for the organization. And in fact, in many cases, in the case of tough bosses, their goals for the organization are much, much larger than the professional goals which the organization gives. Like for example, if the organization tells a tough boss that you are going to achieve 2 crores in revenue per year, this tough boss will actually keep his revenue goal at about 3 or 4 crores, which will be about 100% more than what the organization expects, because that is a kind of discipline they like to work in. That is a kind of work culture they like to breed, and that is how they have grown in their career. They have reached their pinnacle positions in their careers essentially because they have this mindset that they should win much, much bigger than the expectations of the organization. So in this framework, if you work with such people, you're really going to gain a lot of knowledge, particularly in the domain, particularly in the way you should work, the style in which you work, the style in which you can achieve your goals, and the ease with which you can achieve your revenue goals as a person, which is going to help you not just grow in terms of role and rank, but also in terms of a lot of money and incentives. So keep these things in mind and understand that tough bosses and toxic bosses are not the same. You should have the very, very clear distinction. A tough boss is someone who makes you deliver despite all odds, whereas a toxic boss is someone who doesn't want you to deliver come what may. So if you can spot this difference, stay with the tough boss, learn with the tough boss, grow with the tough boss, and quit the toxic boss the moment you are able to see signals of whatever I said till now. So this is all from this particular video from you. I'm sure you had a good insight and a very, very different insight from what many of the channels do give. Thanks for your time. Have a wonderful week ahead, and stay tuned to this channel. Press the like and subscribe button. I wish you all good luck. Thank you.